I decided to run this event because one of the number one questions we get asked these days is how the world of Opus intersects with the world of logistics. We work with businesses up and down the supply chain, and logistics, as the two humans on the screen know, is a very complicated operation and not as simple as we all, as the public believes it is, which is why it's so awesome to be able to have this conversation today with you and really dig in deep on what logistics is, how it connects so many people in the food industry, and how your particular companies are solving very interesting, massive problems that are so critical for us to solve in the industry today. Everyone on this call might know me. If you don't know me, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Opus Training. We provide text message based training to frontline employees in the food industry. So thus, Corey and Adam are here today, two industry leaders who are really excited to be joining us. I'm going to toss it over. Maybe Corey, we can start with you. Just a quick introduction. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you personally get into the business that you're in? What's your 10-cent story?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Rachel, obviously, thank you for having me. And Adam, I just realized not only do we both have long hair, but I think we're wearing the same shirt as well, which we obviously didn't plan. But no, so Corey Menaconi, co-founder and CEO of Zuul. We are New York City's ghost kitchen operator. We were very fortunate to open up New York City's first ghost kitchen facility last September. And, essentially how I got into the business, I grew up in the industry. My father owned an IHOP and then later a bar and grill. So some of my earliest memories were spent in kitchens and just restaurants in general. But fast forward to 2015, I was very fortunate to be the first employee at Relay Delivery here locally in New York City. My first day there, we did 50 deliveries. Just under 3 short years later, we did, I think, 20,000 on my last day, just under that. So not only did I get to know every restaurant worth getting to know in New York, I started to see just how big the behavioral shift was happening amongst consumers to really prefer off-premise dining, primarily delivery. And, thought of all those historical challenges I saw some of my folks, face firsthand. There's now this whole new challenge that the restaurant infrastructure was never built with intent of supporting off-premise dining. Which is why, in a pre-COVID world, you'd walk into a space and there's almost as many couriers as there are retail foot traffic. So we very thoughtfully and strategically design, infrastructure to help alleviate some of those pain points, plus be an operating partner to our brands.
Thanks, Corey. Adam, off to you.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for including me in this chat. And I almost feel not worthy to participate because I don't actually come from the restaurant side of the industry, and in full transparency, know very little compared to everybody on this call probably about the restaurant industry. But I come from the healthcare space. I've been an entrepreneur and have been in different aspects of the business strategy side of looking at the world through this lens of what is absurd, and thinking about what we can do as builders, creators, storytellers, and entrepreneurs to address things in our world that we can make better for those that are less fortunate. And I'm the managing director of an organization that does just that, called Not Impossible Labs, based in Southern California, where I'm located, and the co-founder of Hunger Not Possible, which is one of the portfolio companies that we created to address food insecurity, not just in the United States, but we are US, where there's 50 million people that don't know where their next meal is coming from, which we can get into in a little bit, but is very much a classic definition of how we would discuss that. What is absurd about that is the fact that we have plenty of food in our country to feed those in need, and just haven't aligned the right supply and demand channels to make that reality possible today. So excited to participate in the conversation from probably a little bit of a different angle, and looking forward to any questions that I can help to answer.
Thank you both. And I think that this is why we're so excited to connect with you today, is that you both do come from very different perspectives and you're solving two unique problems. So I actually think one of my favorite questions to ask at the start of any panel is, if you both are, whether you like it or not, Adam, you're in the food industry now. And so I'm curious if you could describe the state of the food industry right now in 2 words. What 2 words would you use?
I would say one from my lens is challenged. That's one word. And the second word would be opportunity, because I think with some of the challenges that we're facing right now, creates this really unique intersection of things that can exist today that couldn't have existed even 6 months ago or 8 months ago before COVID hit. And so, we launched Hunger Not Impossible back in March, not knowing that most of the supply side that we were going to be relying on, which is the restaurant industry, would be challenged in the way that they have been. And we've seen a massive opportunity to help prop up the restaurant industry during this time and drive more, not just funding, but more attention and resources toward those that need it, that otherwise might not have been able to get access to it. So I think, the cliche saying that never waste a good crisis, I think plays to exactly what is happening right now, where the restaurant industry is is forced to change, and those that can recognize and understand where the puck is going to enable, I think, a new version of the restaurant industry that is going to be probably more accessible to a broader audience in the future.
One of my favorite words, accessibility. Thanks, Adam. Corey, if you could describe the state of the food industry in 2 words, what 2 words would you choose? Why?
Yeah, Adam, I think you hit the nail on the head there for a multitude of reasons. But I think if I had to describe it, it'd likely be a natural evolution. And where we were headed pre-COVID has certainly been accelerated quite a bit through the pandemic, specifically to off-premise. And to Adam's point on the challenged, this is a tough time for the industry. But in terms of never wasting a crisis.
Okay, listen. I'm calling you because
I think
use me as your one sexual outlet. I'm gonna do you as a sex.
Somebody needs to mute.
Yes, I think when there's this type of challenge that exists today, it ultimately breeds quite a bit of creativity and scrappiness, and we were talking as a team right as the pandemic hit and not really knowing what the future held. There's some of the biggest companies in food today were actually started during the Great Depression. Whether it was Publix, who legitimately sold food out of his living room to keep food on his table for his family. And it evolved into now, obviously, the Publix that we know it today. That's just one of many examples. So I think we're seeing a natural evolution, and we're starting to see quite a bit of creativity to make it through this. And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of folks, once we're on the other side of this pandemic. Oh, Rachel, I think you're on mute.
I'm great at that. I love how the framing of that is also very much around the requirement for some level of agility right now. Natural evolution has this organic nature to it. And it sounds like what you're saying is also with that comes a lot of dexterity and the ability to kind of adjust, which I think we all know is more important than ever. And perhaps a good segue into our next question. I'm sure everyone here is anxiously waiting to hear a little bit more about your businesses. So you gave some brief introductions, but would love to hear the nuts and bolts of what exactly a ghost kitchen is, Corey. What do you do at Zuul Kitchens?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I'll take a deep dive into our first facility here in Soho. We essentially rented out a 5,000 square foot space and then essentially gutted it completely and built 9 4-walled kitchens that range from about 185 to 285 square feet, give or take. They're all equipped with a 10-foot hood, universal Ansel coverage, so brands can come in and plug and play any semblance of equipment they need to be successful. And then per New York City Department of Health Code, there's a couple sinks in there as well, 3-comp sink and a hand sink. Outside of that, the brands then come in and rent out the space. They bring in their product, their labor, and their equipment, and essentially turn on, the delivery apps and operate in a delivery-only capacity. Because we have the incredible opportunity to house multiple, heavy hitting brands under one roof, there's quite a bit of, aggregation there and efficiency gains rather, to the point of, we're their operational partner. We're not their landlord in any sense. We've got 2 different wash bays where we actually clean their equipment for them. We have expediters that run from the back of the house to the front of house, where we also manage the front of house. So if somebody, from Uber Eats or Relay or DoorDash, whomever comes in, says, I'm here for Rachel and Adam's order, it's actually a Zuul employee that's handing it off. So not only do we eliminate essentially the capital expenditure needed to, launch a new restaurant, but we provide quite a bit of operational support that actually helps pare down the labor model a bit for these restaurant operators, which can be challenging as well on their bottom line. So that's how, we operate from an infrastructure standpoint. And then, we've got some technology that we layer on top to drive some better margin business than one can gather from the delivery space. So it's really a big ecosystem that we're building to really make the industry a little less challenging, which unfortunately can be pretty abrasive to some folks.
Yeah, and I do want to touch on that technology question in a little bit for sure, and how you're leveraging technology in order to better support businesses. So we'll definitely come back to that. Adam, I'm going to toss it to you. Not Impossible Labs is this like amazing ecosystem of problem solvers solving, as you've put it, these absurdities, and I love that. I'd love for you to dig in a little bit on Hunger Not Impossible and the work that you're doing right now.
Sure. So the team became really just obsessed with the concept of food insecurity, and the reason that we refer to it as an absurdity is because it is preventable. Our country doesn't have what I consider to be the luxury that other countries have that are dealing with this, and the excuse of not enough food, right? When a country's in famine, there's a pretty real reason and legit reason why people in their country might go hungry and suffer the dire, heartbreaking consequences of that. We don't have that excuse in our country, and so that just created this unique question for us as a company. And we typically rank order some of the topic areas that we're going to go and deep dive on based on how often it keeps us up at night and how early in the morning we get up to work on this problem. And food insecurity kind of, outranked all the other things that we were talking about at that time about a year and a half ago at the company. And we just started getting really close to the problem, like we do any of our initiatives, because we typically don't have a lot of experience in the topic area when we first start out to address it. And what we heard time and time again from different individuals and families that were experiencing food insecurity was that a lot of the existing solutions were not meeting their needs. They were not meeting people where they are. They didn't really even understand what food insecurity even looked like. Some of these other solutions, when a family might be working 3-4 jobs, at a time, just trying to put food on their family's table, that going across town to wait in line for 2 hours at a soup kitchen, or getting a box of groceries at a food bank might not actually be useful for them for a variety of reasons, especially if they're living in a car or having other situations that they need to address. So we looked at that and said, okay, great. There's an entire population of people that are experiencing food insecurity, have cell phones. They might not have the mobile phone that we have, connected to the data plans that we have here on this call. But they have a phone that can accept messages and can be used for texting. And literally on any corner block that we happen to be talking to people on, there were restaurants within walking distance. And so we asked the question, how might we connect individuals who need a meal, who have a cell phone, with a meal that is being prepared at a local restaurant through text messaging, the most ubiquitous form of communication. And that became Hunger Not Possible. We prototyped some early versions of that were never meant to scale, proved out a couple of key things that we needed to in terms of people's willingness to engage in this type of service, organizations' willingness to administer this program on behalf of their population that they're trying to keep fed and healthy, and then restaurants, will they even participate? And I'm excited to actually share that, except for a few exceptions, the restaurants that are participating in our program don't even know that they're participating, because one of the key design principles that we had to enable was making sure that we weren't asking anything of the value chain to do anything different. We needed to reduce as many friction points as possible, which includes making sure that people don't have to download a mobile app or sign into a website, making sure that restaurants don't have to do anything other than what they're already used to doing, which is accepting orders, making those orders. And in this case, our participants go in and pick up those orders as to-go orders. So it created a really frictionless experience across the whole ecosystem that is enabling the service. And we launched it in March. We just passed through our 50,000th meal a couple of weeks ago, and couldn't have imagined the timing that we launched this in. You know, we didn't know planning this for the last year that we would be serving a population of people that because of the pandemic created even more urgency around not knowing where their next meal was coming from, and making sure that we were doing it in as frictionless a way as possible.
It's interesting how both of the work that you're doing has to include this word, frictionless. It has to be almost like you don't exist, like you're almost invisible to the world. And I'd love to dig in a little bit. We got a question from Fred. Fred, I see you, I hear you. We're going to toss that question in magically into this one too. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you're leveraging technology in order to solve these problems. And a little tangential question for you, Corey, on logistics. Have restaurants had to pare down their menus in order to adjust to the smaller space that Zuul has? So that was
Absolutely
a strange question, but I think you got me.
Yeah, no, for sure. So in terms of technology, we're very fortunate to bring in some technology in-house late last year, as we very quickly realized by having multiple brands under one roof, we, for the first time ever, could allow consumers throughout New York, both in a residential building or a commercial building, to actually order from multiple brands at once. Which didn't exist, right? If you had a meeting and you wanted to order from multiple restaurants, it's multiple delivery fees, multiple couriers showing up at multiple times. However, because we have them all under one roof, we can very efficiently do that. And obviously there's economies of scale to be had there for everyone involved. And really, you know, we took it as an opportunity to lean into our mission, which is helping people thrive in the business of food. And you know, because we make, you know, healthy margins on the real estate front, we could actually charge a fraction of the cost that a lot of the big four, the incumbents, charge. This is Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, et cetera, thus making our brands have a bit more sustainable models, which obviously bodes well for the entire ecosystem. So that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, it's partnerships potentially with folks like Adam, you know, that can help streamline this even more. And you know, I think that's one of the things that excites me the most about the opportunity that we have at Zuul is not only can we have an impact on the operator's life, but we can also have an impact in the community. You know, we're looking at a couple new locations that may be nearby to, you know, low-income housing, where we can have a specific delivery program to ensure that there's incredibly cost-effective meals for these folks to help out with a lot of the challenges that people face day to day. So really just the tip of the iceberg on where we're at today. And then Fred, to your point, yeah, there's obviously space constraints. We're home to one of New York's heaviest hitting delis, Sarge's Deli. They've been around for 55 years and expanded for their first time actually into Zuul Kitchen. And it became very apparent very, very quickly that we could not house their 250 item menu in Zuul. But what's interesting is if you look at the data there, it's a classic 80-20 rule. 80% of your delivery volume comes from 20% of your menu. So being very strategic on what to place and where has helped alleviate some of those space constraint concerns, if you will.
So this is fascinating, and it makes me immediately think of you, Adam. And I want to actually dig into menu, because I know that that's something that you've explored with your constituency, and the idea of choice. But if you could dig in a little bit, when somebody is hungry, what do they do, and how do they interact with Hunger Not Impossible? And what technology are you leveraging?
Sure. So when somebody who's on our platform wants to order a meal, they just text the chatbot. So we essentially have a front-end chatbot experience, which is an SMS program. It's not a native app experience. It's just like texting. If any of us were texting each other right now, and they text the word hungry, and that's an arbitrary word for different programs that we launch. That word could be anything, but for all intents and purposes, they text that word into the Hunger Not Possible number that they have access to. And then it responds with a question, asking them for their address. Now, most of the people that we are serving don't have a consistent address. So it doesn't have to be their home. It could be any address that they want it to be based on their geography, based on where they're at in that moment. Based on that address, our program will return a list of 10 restaurants that are in their vicinity that are able to be selected from. Choice is another big design principle for us. No matter who you are, we believe that you have the ability to make a choice about where you want to eat, and that shouldn't be tied to how much money somebody has. And so somebody who receives that list can select number 1 for Subway, number 2 for Chipotle, number 3 for Panera Bread. Most of the restaurants that we are including in our platform are quick serve restaurants where the price point is about $7 a meal, which obviously does limit some choice, but we want to give people access to choice regardless. And if I press number 1 for Subway, then I'm going to see a list of curated menu options that our team has curated that are healthier menu items from that restaurant. And so in the case of Subway, it might be a turkey sandwich or a veggie sandwich, not a cheesy meatball sub. We kind of take Maslow's hierarchy approach of making sure that some food is going to be better than no food. And then if there is some food to be available, we want to make sure it's the healthier options. And so we do that, and we curate all those menu items so that there's a selection of things that individuals can order. They press number 2 for in this case, turkey sandwich. That text message places the order at the point of sale at that restaurant as if it was any other online order that was coming through the Postmates system. And so Postmates is our integration partner into the access to all these menus and the access to the point of sale. When we were building this out, we sent emails out to anyone who had already done the legwork to aggregate all these restaurants and all the menu items and had integration points into the point of sale so that we didn't have to reinvent that wheel. Postmates was the first to respond to us. We're not exclusive with them. We're exploring ways to expand our network of supply. And we'll eventually even include things like grocery stores and other forms of supply that we can continually reduce the cost of these meals and pass those savings onto our customers, which are purchasing our service on behalf of their population. So charities, Boys and Girls Clubs of the world, YMCAs, hospitals, health systems that are addressing this unmet need for their population. Lots of different folks, and even the government eventually will have I think a need to address food insecurity in a more effective way than is currently being done. So our technology is fairly simple on the front end. It just feels like you're texting a friend. But on the back end of it, there is some complexity to require all these integration points and the management of a population. We didn't realize that we were actually building a health management or population health management tool when we were setting out to build this. But what we're finding is that the way that our customers are using it on the enterprise side there's a care coordinator, there's a social worker that's responsible for managing a population of at-risk people. And they can not only see when Adam has eaten, but they can see when Adam hasn't eaten in 3 or 4 days, and making sure that they can now have a text message relationship with that individual to reach out and make sure that they've got everything they need to get that meal.
So Adam, do individuals, when they text in and they say that they would like to order a meal, do they know that they're interacting with Hunger Not Impossible, or are they interacting with the restaurant? And Corey, same question for you. Do people know that they're interacting with Zuul, or are they interacting with, any of the restaurants, any of your restaurant partners?
It's a pretty quick answer for Hunger Not Impossible. The way that participants are onboarded is very much that they're interacting with Hunger Not Impossible, which is soon to be renamed. We just spun it off as its own company, so it will no longer be named Hunger Not Impossible. But that participants know that they're dealing with this new innovative program that they're getting access to. And in most of the cases, these have been pilot programs that we've launched in the last 6 months, and we're excited to see the relationships with our participants grow, where there is a lot of trust between that individual who's receiving that meal and our team, because they've actually been helping to, in some cases, QA it and identify where it can be made better.
Always. Yeah, I love that. And it's something that people can carry with them wherever they go. So it would make sense. Can you share the name yet?
I'm going to hold off on sharing the name only because we're going through this whole brand strategy conversation right now. And I want to make sure that it's ready when we finally share it.
Here, we went through the same very rigorous process until one light bulb moment. So and it was not what we had expected. So I empathize with that. Corey, do people, when they're ordering from any of your restaurant partners, it would be great if you could name a couple of those folks. Do they know that they're ordering from you?
Yeah, so a bit. We really blast out the brands front and center, whether it's on our website or otherwise in email and marketing campaigns as well. Because at the end of the day, no one needs to really know who Zuul is. We just need to use our platform to put the brands front and center. That said, there's some unique opportunities by partnering with landlords or actual companies. There's a lot of customization that's involved, whether it's a custom URL, or we can upload a logo, or we can essentially white label the platform for a specific landlord or for a specific company, which we're seeing folks like quite a bit, because there's further customization with per diems and coupons, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, it just says fed by Zuul on the bottom left. And otherwise, the brands and the potential, tenants or companies or landlords are front and center with the brands as well.
So we've dug into the work that you're doing, the people and the businesses that you're partnering with. I'd love to dig in a little bit. You both are, and this is why we brought you here today, you're both in your own right logistics experts. You are solving this incredibly challenging logistics issue. What in your field, maybe Adam, we can start with you, is the biggest misconception that people have about food logistics? What's something that people just don't know about food logistics?
Well, I think it starts with the fact that there is a lot of food in our country that gets thrown out. And the amount of food probably, and I don't have the exact stats off the top of my head, so forgive me here for making this statement that might not be 100% accurate, but we probably throw out more food in a single day than some countries could consume in an entire month or even year. And that's borderline criminal. So for me, I feel like it is our responsibility to make sure that we are not necessarily trying to re-architect the entire industry around the food waste problem. That is a long tail problem that will get worked out over time. But I think that what we can do a better job is further upstream, preventing food from going to waste by redirecting it just in time. So it is really about identifying where there's inefficiencies in the supply chain. And that's why I love so much about what Corey's working on, is they're essentially coming in to provide a service that could reduce the cost of these meals. You know, for us, we look at it as like, if we can promise certain brands that we're going to be giving them a certain amount of business, you know, that's valuable to them. And if they have that predictable revenue stream, they would consider reducing the cost of the meals for our population that need these meals. And the kind of work that I think Corey's doing to create those efficiencies and reduce those unit economics on a per meal basis directly attribute to brands saying, you know what, during the hours of 4 to 7, when we're not as busy, yeah, we'll give Hunger Not Possible half off these Subway sandwiches, or you know, whatever the opportunities might be that allow our customers to be able to feed more people for the same dollars. And so we look at it as like pre-waste. How do we make sure that throughout the day we're optimizing people's inventory so that we can make sure that people are getting fed and that there isn't food left out at the end of the day that is either going to go to waste, or that the industry is going to have to spend time, money, and resources redirecting in a fairly inefficient way with cold storage and other issues. So I think, you know, the opportunity that exists in the inefficiencies is something that I think if every part of the ecosystem looked at critically, we would be able to address the fact that 50 million people in our country don't know where their next meal is coming from.
Exactly why you're here today. Corey, what is the biggest misconception people have about food logistics in your world?
Yeah, to piggyback off of, you know, what some of Adam said, I think that the biggest misconception is that on-demand delivery is incredibly challenging on a unit level to be profitable. And when you break that down further, it's one person ordering one meal delivered by one person to one building or one person. It's actually tough to find someone in that equation that actually wins. The restaurant is being charged anywhere from 20 to 35%. The consumer is probably paying 1.4 to 5x what that meal would cost if they walked through the door, because the restaurant has to try to subsidize some of that. The courier is likely underpaid. And the people that aggregated said order aren't cash flow positive, at least according to their latest earnings reports, the one they have access to. And as such, you know, that's not sustainable long-term, obviously. And I think that the core solve that we have is by having multiple brands under one roof, we can now allow multiple people to order from multiple restaurants and to be delivered at one specific time by one person. So what we've actually done is gone a bit of the route of what you see in grocery delivery, where it's not quite on demand, you pick a window. So instead of, you know, when you go onto our site, instead of saying, I want my food now, you actually select a time on when you want it, which allows more and more orders to come through so that instead of one person taking one order, they're now taking, you know, 50 orders down to 4 World Trade Center. And the economies of scale there are significant. And as such, the consumer pays less because there's no service fee, there's no delivery fee. A lot of times there's no hospitality, or excuse me, tip included, because again, there's multiple folks in that one specific order. So I could ramble on for this or about this for hours, but I think one of the biggest things we'll see in the delivery space is kind of the death of on demand and a bit more planning, just as we plan around, you know, specific grocery delivery as it stands today.
So we're getting a ton of questions coming through, so I might have to divert some of our planned questions, and we'll come back to those in a few minutes here, but I did want to give attention to some of the folks who are curious here. We're just going to tick down the line, and I think just to sort of comment on what both of you are saying around being innovative about how we think about food and food logistics. It continues to be a problem that some folks believe has been solved, and yet we still see all of the continuous critical issues, not only for restaurant owners, but also for the humans who need to live and work and eat every single day. And so I appreciate the both of you sharing that perspective. Adam, this one's for you from Fred. Have you leveraged any groups like Food Recovery? I'm actually going to piggyback both of these questions from Fred and Emily. Have you leveraged groups like Food and Recovery Network or the three big contract food service companies? I assume we're talking about Aramark and the larger corporate caterers. And also, have you partnered with local politicians, like assembly people who have constituents who can go to them for food and food banks? Just wondering what that may look like.
Yeah, so we're in conversations with one of the big contract food service companies that supply the quick serve restaurant industry. So there's a all parties win mentality when it starts further upstream, and we're able to figure out how to ultimately pass on some savings to every part that needs to contribute to lowering the cost of a meal. For predictable revenue. So think kind of bulk buying a certain amount of meals from a brand, and then using our network to make sure that those meals get distributed appropriately. So that's something that we are doing. And we have lots of conversations with local and state governments, especially during the pandemic. We were trying to essentially figure out how to use our platform to address some of the new programs that are being established to get at-risk communities government paid for meals. And we're still in conversations with a lot of those. We did have one pilot that was paid for by the city of Santa Monica for that reason here in Los Angeles, which was great. And we're looking at a couple of different business cases for where government dollars flow through the system to address food insecurity. And when you think about the unintended cost savings that could occur when you keep a population well fed and healthy, there's a lot of constituents that benefit from that, whether those are health plans, even taxpayer dollars. When you think about probably the largest food budget in our country comes from the government, around $80 billion for the SNAP program. And we don't get a whole lot of nutritional accountability or return on our investment necessarily from that program. And we think that there's an opportunity to create a more data-driven approach to making sure that people are using their dollars in a more health-conscious and convenient way. Over it.
I think Stephen's question after that is a little bit digs a little bit deeper. You've talked before, at least with our team, about how some of these meals are you have underwriters for them, and you have a really unique business model. Corey, I'm going to toss this one to you afterward. How do you make money? And as somebody who came from the nonprofit world and is now in the social impact world at Opus, this is always a really important question to be asking. How can we be helping people and still be running a sustainable business? Adam, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. It's a great question. And I think it highlights where I think a lot of previous initiatives have maybe not created a sustainable business model in the past. And so we are a B2B2C company right now. So we sell Hungry Not Possible as a service to organizations that are feeding a population of people. And they're feeding a population of people for different reasons. So Boys and Girls Club, YMCAs, these are obviously charities and nonprofits that don't have big budgets, but they offer a lot of different services to at-risk families in their community, and addressing food insecurity is one of many. So we've been able to structure programs with about a dozen boys and girls clubs. We're just launching our first with the YMCA down in Dallas. And, you know, we see a pretty incremental growth trajectory for those types of organizations. Where it gets a little bit more interesting from a business model perspective is the health plans that are financially incentivized to lower the cost of care for a population of at-risk patients. There's a lot of reasons why certain patients might be at risk, and you could prevent some of those costs by doing different things with that population. And one of the things that you can do is engage them in their own health and healthcare more effectively. Food can be used as a Trojan horse to do that. And so by putting somebody on a 6-month intervention where food becomes the Trojan horse to signing up for a health risk assessment, to be able to get a baseline, to be able to sign up for your first primary care visit. There's lots of basic things that these health plans need to be able to do to even start that conversation with those individuals and you know, their members. And so there's a lot of reasons why a health plan might want to do that. Our model is right now we're not making any money, to be perfectly transparent, but in the future, once we've aggregated a large enough population, so if you think there's 30+ million people currently on government food assistance programs that are living with food insecurity on a daily basis, we've aggregated tens of millions of people, maybe even more. We believe that we would be able to command discounts on those healthy menu items. And once we've earned the right to take a small margin of those, meaning we've taken a $7 Subway sandwich down to $3.50, and we take 5 cents of each meal, you know, that's a very small margin, but in high volume that can move the needle for a company. And so, you know, if we're doing 1 million meals a day, that could be significant. Obviously, it's going to take us a long time before we get there. And a big part of the equation is our ability to both aggregate large market and then do the work to reduce the prices for food options for those individuals.
So thanks, Adam. And this, of course, swings right back to you, Corey. The issue of price and business models, I know, is an ongoing discussion in the food industry. 20 years I've been in the industry, and every week I hear thin margins. It's no secret, but you are helping businesses thrive in a different way. So curious to hear how is a ghost kitchen, and specifically Zuul kitchens, how are you structuring your business so that you can survive, and also so that you can have a competitive, help businesses have a competitive advantage?
Sure. You know, so in terms of how our model is structured, so we make money off of the monthly membership fee. So it's typically inclusive, you know, for the brands, it's inclusive of hood cleaning, pest control, phone, internet, trash, on-site labor support, a lot of the BD efforts that we go out and actually drive demand for the brands through our platform, et cetera, et cetera. Again, we try to reduce as much friction as possible and make that fairly easy for them to break down. And then again, you know, anything that we do drive by way of partnerships with, you know, Silverstein Properties or some other landlords throughout the city, we capture a very small percentage of that as well. Historically, we strive to get the brands anywhere from, call it 15 to 25% of every order goes back into their pocket, as opposed to if that specific order came through an Uber Eats or DoorDash or Postmates, et cetera. So all that's to say those are our two revenue streams today. You know, the ultimate goal here, though, and long-term how we see this playing out, hopefully, is we've got a true opportunity to build the AWS or Shopify for restaurants, where it's a true operating system that literally from product procurement all the way through fulfillment, we have a hand in supporting. And as such, again, the economies of scale to be had there are so significant that it just becomes a win-win for everyone involved, which is exciting. We're years, if not decades, away from accomplishing that, but you know, that's what fires me to get up out of bed every morning.
No big problem is ever solved overnight.
It's true.
So, so I know we have about 10 minutes left. I have to ask this question because we no matter what automation and technology we insert into the logistics world and into the food world, I firmly believe that we will still always be a heavily people reliant industry. There's lots of robots. I think they can be our friends, but I know that we're all, and everyone on this call knows how people reliant the industry is. So with that in mind, and of course, with the frontline and essential workforce in mind, I'm curious in what way, and Corey, maybe we can toss this back to you, in what way your business intersects with the frontline workforce. And when it comes to logistics, what is the importance of staff training and kind of interacting with those humans, specifically with third party perhaps, but you also have some other folks that you're interacting with and employing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I that's one of the many things that excites me. You know, you look at the industry as a whole, and churn can be fairly abrasive to operators' bottom line. And I think that stems from, you know, times it's a grimy, challenging business that unfortunately has a bit of a dark culture as well. You know, we see a lot of folks struggle with addiction, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the opportunities that we, you know, really hold near and dear to our hearts is that, you know, because we have multiple brands under one roof, we have an opportunity to shape the culture and the curate the experience for these folks. And just by, you know, washing their dishes, right? We take that kind of less sexy part of frontline operators or frontline workers' job, and we put that on our backs. But again, the culture and the experience that we have a hand in curating within our facility, I think has started to resonate. And I think we're seeing less of our brand staff turnover, and obviously that positively impacts their bottom line. And then to take it a step further too, you know, I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of deliveries in this town on my bicycle, dating back to my relay days, and it's incredibly challenging and abrasive. You know, whether you're dodging an Uber or a Lyft because they could give a heck about you and they just need to turn right or they need to turn left, you know, to interacting with doormen at buildings. You know, it's a natural cat and mouse game. The doorman's one job is to not let anybody past, and arguably as a delivery worker, your one job is to get past. So, you know, we can also curate a better experience for them as well, whether it's, you know, coffee, water, and tea, or just a simple bench to let them take a load off while they wait for an order. Or, you know, we built what we think is New York City's largest charging port to keep their phone charged. You know, ultimately, if it's not, they can't make money and they can't service our members. So there's so many things that we could have a hand in to just do it the right way. You know, you look at this industry, any semblance of innovations happen off the backs of the operators over the last 10 years. And that unfortunately kind of trickles down to the restaurant workers. And as such, we've got an opportunity to do it the right way. And I think hopefully we're well on our way.
So Adam, totally different business model, totally different interactions. What, if any, interactions do you have with frontline teams at Hunger Not Impossible, and what sort of training might be needed for those folks, if any?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And there's this healthy tension, I think, that exists between what we're trying to do, which is make sure that an individual can walk into any restaurant that they've ordered from, just like any other paying customer, pick up their to-go meal, just like anyone else who paid for it themselves online. And because that individual hasn't paid for it themselves online, it can sometimes create some unexpected friction points and some real embarrassment that we're trying to avoid at all costs. So we don't want the person behind the counter knowing that this individual is part of our program. But at least when we initially launched, we couldn't figure out technically how to get the orderer's name on the order because it was coming through a single account we called Hunger Not Impossible. And so we started getting some feedback that the frontline employees at some of these restaurants were confused because so many people were coming in with the same name on the order. And it got to the point with one restaurant, they didn't let that individual get their meal because they thought somebody else had already come out and picked it up. And so we quickly realized like there is a responsibility that we have to do frontline education. And while, from a human perspective, we want it to be really frictionless, there are some things that we can be doing to enable that even more than we had thought in the past. And so that is, making sure that even though these come in just as regular Postmates orders today, and in the future, there will be many other types of orders, whether they're coming from a Zuul kitchen or others, but making sure that the brand knows about the program, because they should be proud of the fact that they are a part of it. Even if maybe the person who's making the meal doesn't know that they're making it for somebody who didn't pay for it themselves. And so I think there is some back office communication and education that needs to happen. And then we've gotten a lot of inbound requests from brands that realized that they were part of this, and they want to participate in a bigger way. And so in our effort to try and make it as seamless as possible, I think we've inadvertently stumbled upon some friction that we've addressed, but then missed some opportunities at the onset to bring these brands into this larger story about, look, we're not just feeding people who don't know where their next meal is coming from. We're driving business to these restaurants to keep the doors open. And there's a big story there, obviously, with what's happening right now that we're really proud to say, of the, 55,000 meals that we've facilitated over the last 6 months. We have a lot of granular data on exactly where those meals are coming from, and we can take those data to those brands and say, look, we're giving you this amount of business per week, per month. These are all the meals that are being ordered, and help them understand who this customer is, because no chief marketing officer at any of these brands ever woke up saying, how do we better market to a population that can't afford our food? And through our platform, we're essentially enabling them to serve this population in a really dignified way.
I love that. And it's we're coming up on time here, and I actually think it's a really nice bow to tie on this. Both of you have kind of alluded to this better, more inclusive future of work and of food. I want to give you your 30-second spot to share with our audience here. It's 2020 right now. I can't even believe it. We've got 8 weeks left in this really intense year. Fast forward to 2030, and what critical changes, what critical issues have been addressed, and where do you see the future of your work and the future of food? Adam, maybe we can start with you.
All right. Well, I think we can eliminate hunger in our country, and it starts by starting really small. Let's start eliminating hunger in the cities that are our backyards, right? There's plenty of companies that would love to participate, but how do we make it really easy for them to participate, whether it's the brands that are supplying the food, whether it's companies that are just headquartered in that city, figuring out how to reduce the barrier to entry so that we can actually start making measurable progress against this and make it really contagious. When somebody donates a meal and you get a feedback loop that says there's a family that just picked up this menu item for their family, you're going to be pretty excited to probably donate another meal. And as an organization, when you start seeing the return on investment, keeping a population fed and healthy and thriving, the economic benefits to that, I think, will pay dividends on our society. And I think an 8 to 10 year period of time, we shouldn't be talking about this. Hunger should not be a thing in our country, and it'll allow us to move on to other and address this in other countries where there might be other logistical challenges, like the fact that there isn't enough food.
That was going to be my follow-up question, and you answered it. Can you do it in 10 years? And I believe you can. I think what you're doing is incredible. Corey, solve me a problem in 10 years. Where is the future of food in 10 years? And what's the future of Zuul in 2030 when we hop on another call?
Yeah, no, there's so many ways it can go, Rachel. And I think, um, again, if I had a crystal ball, I do think there'll be a complete delineation between on-premise and off-premise, similar to retail and e-commerce. You know, Nike's not shipping shoes out of their Soho store in Broadway. And as such, you know, as more and more of that gets put into a piece of infrastructure that's optimized for delivery, again, the economies of scale to be had are significant for everyone. And I see a world in which, you know, it'll the prices will be very similar to what you see in retail, which obviously is not the case today. And I think by optimizing even a bit further there, delivery can actually be more cost effective than actually walking down the street and grabbing a meal at a restaurant. So again, it's a big uphill battle, but that world certainly exists, and we're going to fight tooth and nail to get there.
Thank you. And thank you both so much for joining us today. It's been great to connect with you. Thank you to everyone who participated and watched and listened. Really great questions. I'm going to follow up with everyone. I'm going to loop Adam and Corey in so you have everyone's connections. This is a community we're building. We love to see two different walks of life in the food world intersect. So Corey, Adam, I really hope we see some collab from Zuul and Hunger Not Impossible quite soon.
I'm excited for it.
I was going to say, I think there's a very real possibility of that being a reality.
Let's make it happen.
For sure.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great, great afternoon.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye, everyone.